And welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for Thursday, March 19th of 2015. Our agenda tonight has been slightly revised from the revision tonight. So the order is approval of minutes, questions from the public. We're going to do the appointing of the special police officers right after that, because Chief Mike Perrano is here to do that with us. We'll have a change of manager for Chipotle Mexican Grill, the continuation of the shade tree hearing discussion for 18 Coolidge Avenue. We're going to have a review of the town warrant zoning articles. We are not going to be doing any of the discussion for funding of the warrant articles involving the harbor. Ted could not join us tonight. We're looking to possibly do that next Thursday. Matters not anticipated within 48 hours. Appointments, Selectmen Town Administrator reports, and then we will adjourn to executive session for the act under the provisions of MGL 30A and 21.A.7 to comply with the open meeting law and conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. So welcome, everybody. And I will take approval of minutes.
I'll vote to approve the March 5th and March 12th minutes as written.
If I may, Paul, I just caught them out March 12th. That's what I was mentioning.
Oh.
So the 5th I'm okay with. The 12th I would just ask. I just didn't have a chance to read it through.
All right.
Okay.
March 5th then. Vote to approve as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And I
Go
would
ahead.
move to approve the February 26th minutes as revised.
No? Okay, I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Or nay.
All right. Questions from the public regarding items not on the agenda? Mr. Hersey.
Good evening. My name is John Hersey. I'd like to pick up where I left off last Thursday night. On the 10th, I went to the Bear Cove Park meeting, and I brought up the subject that the parking lot needs to be plowed at Lynchfield, and the Shelby Path, which is a fire exit for the fire and police to get into Bear Cove Park. It needs to be plowed. Hasn't been done since the 25th of February, and right now it's 22 days later. I also came to the Board of Selectmen last Thursday, and I put my questions to Ted and Betty, and it's very, very slow going, and it finally got done today. Shelby Path, it took 2 days to do it. It would have been a lot easier if a front-end loader went down there and got it done on the day. I feel very, very bad that it happened. It took this long, because now what's happened is on Sunday we had a lady go down Bear Cove Park, and 2 dogs of hers went in the river, and she went in after them, and she had to be rescued. And it would have been an awful liability for the town if they had to get in that exit, if it was up that end of the park. And as of today, down the river by the bridge, by the back river, all the riverfront was done yesterday, but this was done today. So now the fire apparatus, the police department, now they can get in there. What I'm trying to say is, before I go too far here, I was happy to hear that Betty Foley is retiring. Thank you.
Oh, John.
And also, this has been a liability if this lady drowned, because at least 14 people knew about it, okay? And nobody did anything until I finally had to call you, Irma, and I didn't want to, because I expected it to be done this way, but it wasn't done. And thank God for you. You got it done. And Chief Perrano, both of you got on this and got it done. And I thank you for that. I have pictures I want to give to you. This is the, this here has been not plowed. This here is tonight. I just took this. It's done.
Okay.
It's a fire exit.
Thank you, John.
And seeing that it's a liability, I really think he needs to resign. He's
John,
not a good town
enough.
administrator.
Objection.
Enough,
One
John.
more thing. One more thing.
John.
Totally out of order here.
John,
One more thing.
Okay.
This has been 3.5 months, and you have in your packet. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
anyone else? Mike, do you want to come up? The next thing we're going to do is appoint the special police officers, which we do once a year. And I will turn it over to Chief Moreno.
Okay, good evening. This is something we do every year. We reappoint our special police officers. So I'm requesting that the Board of Selectmen reappoint all the following special police officers for the town of Hingham. These appointees are trained by the Massachusetts Municipal Training Committee annually. Their training includes powers of arrest, constitutional law, criminal procedures, CPR, first aid, AED, and they all are weapons qualified. And those officers are Brian Azure, Mark Brennan, Michael Bowes, Kenneth Corson, Joseph Driscoll, Daniel Galvin, Jonathan Gordon, Michael McHugh, Michael Murray, Michael Parker, Mitchell Powers, Michael Riley, Charles Souther, Daniel Souza, Richard St. Laurent, Russell Wade, James Wells, and Brian Willard.
Did you want to say a couple, you want us to do the vote, and then you can say?
I-
Okay. You got off easy.
Sure. I'll move that we reappoint the following personnel as just listed by the chief, but for the purposes of the record: Brian Azure, Mark Brennan, Michael Bowles, Ken Corson, Joseph Driscoll, Daniel Galvin, Jonathan Gordon, Michael McHugh, Michael Murray, Michael Parker, Mitchell Powers, Michael Riley, Charles Souther, Daniel Souza, Richard St. Laurent, Russell Wade, James Wells, and Brian Willard.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Chief, just before we vote, maybe if you could just tell the folks at home a little bit about, maybe if there's a distinction or a little bit about their duties or something, just so they
Sure,
know
yep.
what we're voting on.
Yeah, special police officers, they help us on road details during the year when we don't have enough officers to fill the details. They fill those details. They also help us out at 4th of July parade, the fireworks, and any other big events that the town holds. So, we get very busy with details, and, of course, with our summer activities, we need the help, and these guys step up, and, a number of them are retired police officers. And while I'm talking, I'd like to give a shout-out to retired Lieutenant Joe McCracken, retired Detective Joe Mayer, Special Officer Ron Lincoln, and Joan Sullivan. All of these people have been specials for us for a number of years, and they've all retired from being specials.
I
So,
noticed Joe McCracken's name wasn't on here.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
so-
my.
Yep, so, but, I just wanted to give them thank you for their services.
Excellent. Any comments from the audience?
I'd like to echo that as well. I had the pleasure of working with those gentlemen and lady. It was a pleasure.
They are. I've known them for a long time, too. It's amazing some are going to retire.
Yeah,
Okay.
we all have to someday,
Chief. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for joining us.
Very much.
Thanks,
Okay,
Chief.
Thank you.
See you, Mike.
Okay, the change of manager at Chipotle Mexican Grill.
How you doing?
Hi there.
Hey. Yeah, I'm the new manager over there. I came from the South Shore Plaza.
In fact, why don't you come and sit so people
Sit.
can see you at home?
Is he vote on here for this?
Yeah, I just came to do the permit change of name to me from, I guess, Rodney Wynn that was there previously. I came from the South Shore Plaza location, just taking off this undertaking down here at Derby Street Shops. So I underwent the TIPS training course recently, as per requested from the. whoever-
Yes.
Is it-
We want everyone chips
Yeah,
trained.
no, absolutely. So I did, went and did that training, and so yeah.
Questions?
No.
No? Anything from the audience? Okay. I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve the transfer of manager to David Jameson for Chipotle Mexican Grill of Colorado LLC, also known as Chipotle Mexican Grill, 92 Derby Street, Hingham.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Shade tree hearing. Randy, do you want to recap at least the piece where we are?
Sure. This is a shade tree hearing that took place on December 17th at the Public Works Department. It was requested by Frank Bridgman, the owner of 18 Coolidge Ave, and it was to remove one 26-inch Norway maple tree and one 22-inch sugar maple tree at that location. And there were two objections during the hearing, and under the statute that I cannot make a decision as tree warden, it then the decision has to go to the selectmen.
And everyone came to the selectmen's meeting.
Everyone was at the selectmen's meeting. You heard both sides, and you took under advisement till tonight.
I see at least one set of neighbors in the audience. Any other neighbors? I took Mr. Bridgman up on a visit, and I went, and it was a terrible day. It was so icy and snowy. It is a lovely street, lovely, and it's still normal-sized houses, which I have to thank Frank for. That's what he likes to build. That's very few and far between in Hingham these days. So I'll ask, George, do you want to say anything? You're still okay?
Yeah, no.
Okay. And
Just my understanding of the two trees, I've been trying to keep up on it. Was there some sense that, and I can't remember who it was from, that one of the trees, in terms of preference, would be over the other?
Well, we rate all the trees that come up for shade tree hearing. Basically, we rate all the trees that we get notice on. And the Norway maple tree had a rating of 6 out of 12. And this is the rating scale has to do with the probable target, size of defective parts, probable failure, species rating, and hazard rating. The hazard rating is the total of the rating. So the Norway maple, 26-inch Norway maple, was a 6, which is, it's in fair to good condition. And the sugar maple was rated a 3, which is in very good condition. The higher the rating, the worse the condition of the tree.
So my understanding then, just I'm trying to make sure I do, is that when we were here last time, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, then it would be the Norway maple, maybe the one that was proposed of the two. And there was some, I think Frank had mentioned he was willing to plant some additional trees at that location. Is that right, Frank?
Yes, I just want to clarify that I only really wanted to remove one tree.
That's all we're talking about.
yeah.
And I just wanted to clarify which one was the new.
Do you want to come up and introduce yourself?
It's been a while since the meeting, so I
Yeah.
apologize.
It's fine. My name's Frank Bridget. I'm the applicant and the neighbor, so. But I just wanted to clarify which tree was this one here. Is that the Norway maple or the other one?
I am unsure.
As you look at the
On this
house from
map.
the street, which one does he want to
Yeah,
move?
Frank, which one is, as you look at the house from the street, which is the one that you would prefer?
To the right.
To the right?
Right, after some further discussion with my engineer and the grading, that would make the most sense because you could keep the grade pretty flat. You wouldn't have to raise it up at all.
And then I do have a picture of the house that you are
Correct.
planning to put there, and even though we have no jurisdiction over that, with
Nope.
your negotiation with the neighbors, to
They have
build-
that plan, all the
Okay, to
neighbors.
build this type of house
That
that's
type of
fitting in
house.
in the neighborhood
Yep,
would require you to take down one tree.
correct. Because it's, when you look at it, it's you've got the wetlands, the 100-foot, I was trying to, respect all these setbacks and the wetlands. I mean, there is precedent of going within the 50-foot buffer zone to construct, but I felt if I could keep out of that and keep the house in line with the other houses on the street, which are all kind of towards the front, it would look better than trying to push it back into the wetlands or put another structure or garage out and back there. The lot coverage would be much less.
Let me open it up for questions. Paul?
What would be the caliper of the tree you propose to plant in there, and where would you plant it?
Well, I would leave that up to the tree department, and there's a specific amount that has been proposed to me of $2,600. So I would let them do whatever they want with it.
Randy, do you want to explain how the bylaw
What's
works?
the caliper?
Yeah, what it is, it's a 26-inch caliper, so that'd be $2,600, because it's at $100 an inch for a replanting
In the
and
bylaw.
replacement cost. So. the
What's
app-
that get you?
The applicant has the, we want to gain back the same caliper tree at breast height, okay, that's being taken down. So if it's a 26-inch tree, he can buy 26 inches worth of tree. We buy 3-inch trees now, 2.5 to 3-inch trees. So, and then it would have to be planted at the site the way we wanted. We have worked it out that it'd be about $100 an inch. It'd be the same for him to go and buy the tree and plant it as it would for us to do it at $100 an inch.
So if
It's not clear to me. I'm sorry.
Let me try it this way.
Sure.
So if we agree to allow one tree to come down
Yes.
by the selectmen policies, or bylaws, I can't remember if it's policy or bylaw.
Policies.
Policy, thank you. You would provide $2,600
Yes.
some of that would be put back into the property there?
No, that would be separate, entirely
Okay.
separate. I don't know if I'd have the jurisdiction to dictate where the trees are planted.
We have a list of where trees have to go
And what kind?
and what kind.
Yeah.
And I don't have the list in front of me, but from speaking to Jeff Handerhan, some of the trees are going to be on Coolidge Ave. I don't know where, I don't know when, but there is a plan to replace those trees because some of them are getting old. But we're going to take that $2,600 and buy trees throughout the town.
Okay, I see.
Some will go to Coolidge.
Some will go to Coolidge, and some will go to other places in the town. So we're replacing the 26 inches in whole throughout the whole town.
Okay.
So, and can I say it a different way?
Sure.
By allowing Frank to take one tree down, we're going to get trees for Coolidge Avenue, which has quite a lot of trees today, and we're going to get some other trees for elsewhere.
That's one way to look at it. How long would it take for a 2-inch caliper tree to grow to a 26-inch caliper
100
tree?
years. 80 to 100 years.
It would be a better tree.
You're going to be back there to measure it?
Well, could you put in an 8-inch caliper tree there? I mean,
Not in the same spot. I mean,
right, because he's going to put a driveway in there, right?
yeah, we're going to have to look at the site after it's done. I mean, if you say to take the tree down, we look at all the sites, we have to dig safely, we're going to look at wires, we're going to look at the uses and go from there. We're going to look at the town layout, make sure it's in the town property, but I can't, an 8-inch tree would take a lot of care to maintain, and with droughts and whatnot, I wouldn't want to do that. The younger
Okay.
trees have a better
Okay, better chance of survival.
chance of survival, yeah.
My colleagues have to say.
We'll be back to you.
Okay.
Betty,
Mr. J.
on this selectman policy regarding the money, is that something that's discretionary, or is that, I mean, I'm not familiar with it.
What's discretionary is whether the applicant would replace the tree himself or the trees themselves, or whether he makes payment to the DPW and has them do it,
One or the other.
one or the other.
The normal maples.
Any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
Back to you.
And that's a rating of,
Where do you want to go?
that one is.
I'm favorably disposed to let him take the one tree down based on the hearing, and I was just trying to figure out what else
The other one?
should be in place besides that.
I would agree with Mr. Gannon, because here we have a group of neighbors that are supporting the developer. You're going to end up with more trees on the street than you started with, depending on where Randy finds places to put them. And Mr. Bridgman is going to also landscape around.
Yeah, it benefits me, to landscape around the property,
So
obviously.
I'm favorably disposed on this one, too.
This conceptual rendering, is this in fact what you're going to build there?
It's a rendering, I have a floor plan. I haven't finalized it yet, but it's pretty close.
But essentially, the square footage is what we see here?
Square footage, yeah.
Do you want to tell us what the square footage is?
It's between 25 and 2,600 square feet.
And there's nothing from the neighbors that suggests that this relief is inappropriate? Hearing nothing. I looked at the street myself, went down there. It's difficult to really appreciate the feel of the street when it doesn't have the leaves on it, but to me, it's one of these old established streets that's really pretty when it's treed out. I did notice, however, that there are some trees there that are stressed, which suggests to me that, your department is going to be over there perhaps seriously limbing it or perhaps taking down a few.
We'll be rating them all very shortly.
All right. In an effort to try and maintain the scale of the streetscape with respect to the size of the house, your request for relief, I think, is not inappropriate. I'm not totally comfortable taking down a big mature tree like that, but there are reasons which, in this case, would make me go along with my colleagues on this.
Okay. Do we have a motion, or are we just going to,
I didn't see it on there.
do you want to make one?
Motion to allow the relief requested by Mr.
On
Bridgman?
the 26 Norway.
Yeah, I don't know which one it is, Paul. I don't want to.
It's,
On the,
this is the
how
right-
about the appropriate tree as selected by the DPW?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay.
It's going to be the Norway maple, because I don't recommend to take the sugar maple down, so
I'm just trying
I'm
to-
not sure which one it is.
well, we could look at, can you tell from the pictures?
I really can't at those.
I have a picture.
James Hughes could tell.
I'd like to get it right now, but, and my inclination is to afford the relief for the one on the right. And the problem is, I don't know which one that is, because that's the one where the driveway's going.
It's hard for me to tell which one's 26
know.
inch and
But if
one
that,
2 inch.
is that helpful to you, that if since the relief is requested for the one on the right, if we direct it to, whatever it may be? Because if we afford the relief to the wrong one,
Let's see if
it
there's
doesn't
something.
solve the problem.
If you afford the relief to the 26 inch Norway maple, then that's right, no matter which side it's on. That's the one we can deal with. But the sugar maple is a beautiful tree, and I do not want to take that down.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, my motion would be the tree on the right, because I don't want to come back and afford relief for something that didn't have any value for anybody. And I'm sensitive to what you're saying, but as we sit here, I don't know which tree it is, and I wish I did, but I don't.
I failed to go down there before this meeting. I had other tasks. He put Mr. Bridgman actually asked for both trees,
In the beginning.
one or the other, I believe. Is that not your?
Correct.
Right, so whichever one is the Norway maple, and I wish, sorry, I don't know, that's the one I would agree to take down. I would not want to take. So in other words, what I'm saying is, if the one on the right is a sugar maple, then I'm not in favor of taking that one down. I'll take down the 26-inch Norway on the left. And I guess you just have to change
You know,
your
if-
design.
If the house can be flipped, but, you know, let me make that, as long as I know what's going on, you know.
Do you want to just continue it to make that determination? I mean, it's the wintertime, you're not breaking ground now, right?
No, but it's really been a long process where I can't even move forward with the plans at this point, you know what I mean?
I think you're getting the relief you want, though, but
Correct.
we want to make sure that
Are you,
You know, if I'm comfortable if he doesn't want to, if it ends up to be the one on the right and he's not going to take it down, so really is irrelevant at that point. I'd have to look closely at making something work with the one on the left. And I'm happy to do that. If I have a problem and I don't think I'm not comfortable moving forward with it, I'll come back to the board.
Let's do it that way, 'cause at
Because I'm
least
not
that
sure. I
gets
think
us
it might be the
off.
one on the right, to be honest with you, after my recollection of it, because
I think it's the older tree.
from my standpoint, it looked like,
Right.
when they were talking about it, the one to the left, which I thought was less of important tree, was the more important tree. And that's how much I
That's
don't
correct.
know.
Frank, that's correct, because when we were
Yes.
out there, we thought the lesser important one was a better-looking tree.
Yeah.
So let's just do it by name of the tree, and that
Yes.
closes.
Then that's-
Yeah,
that's
and I'm
fine.
comfortable with that, and if I have issues with it, I'll come back and
okay,
clarify the
we'd be
work.
agreeable to have you back. I just want to get it resolved.
No, I do too.
All right, great. I think I made
Did
a
you do
motion.
a motion?
I did.
26
Let me restate it.
Norway.
Yeah, let me make that,
26
let me
inch
change
Norway
the
maple.
motion. Motion to approve the relief by allowing for the move of 26-inch Norway maple.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's a really cute house.
Thank you.
Randy,
Randy.
you can stay.
No, thank you.
He's
You
got to go
wanna
look
give
at
me
the
the
tree.
I gotta, yeah.
Gary and Mary Savage Dunham, would you join us for the warrant article review? Did you tell Deidre we're not doing?
I did, she's here for zoning.
Oh. Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
Hello,
both.
Gary. Be here. Nice to see you.
Thank you both for joining us.
Quite welcome.
And you were going to take us through the zoning articles that are on the warrant tonight.
Yes.
And just for the people watching at home, the Board of Selectmen does not vote on zoning articles, planning and zoning articles. The advisory committee does and the planning board does. We decided to have Gary and Mary come because last year the selectmen did not review the articles and there was extended discussion on town meeting floor. So this is another opportunity for people at home to listen, learn about the articles, think about them, and if you have questions, I'm sure Mary Savage Dunham and her staff would be happy to answer any of them, so you'll be much more prepared for town meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you. I think I'd like to open. Gary Tonworth-Dick, I'm Chair of the Planning Board, and I have with me Mary Savage Dunham, who is the Community Planning Director for the town. And the Planning Board and the Zoning Board have been working quite diligently this year on a number of zoning amendment articles. We actually started with 11. We are now proposing 6 that are ready to go forward, and 5 were not ready to go forward. Need more review prior to being ready for prime time, as they say. So I'd like you have a summary in front of you which was prepared, and I think it's helpful to kind of focus on some of the specifics. I'd like to focus on the basic reasons why we've entertained and recommended these articles. The first article is Article S, and these articles will be numbered in the warrant, but the first article is Article S, height exceptions. This is a citizen petition which was proposed to the boards by a group of citizens, and it was the first article that we reviewed because it was proposed by citizens. And this essentially, this proposed revision undertakes the issue of railings that might be constructed on the top of a structure. It makes them ineligible for the height exception, which is section 4-C.8 in the regulations. This is important because if the house is built to the maximum allowable height of 35 feet and has mechanical systems on the roof, such as air conditioning systems and the like, the building code would require a safety railing of 42 inches high to protect anyone accessing the mechanical systems for service and/or repairs, or if that equipment was within 10 feet of the edge of the building, which would prevent a person from falling. And so a person would be up here for service and repairs, not for, it's not an entertainment deck kind of a thing, it's only for mechanical service. In the past, this railing was deemed eligible for the height exception, meaning that you could build a 42-inch rail on top of the 35-foot maximum height limit in a residential building. Also, within this bylaw amendment, we're proposing a 5% cap on the area of projections, and what that means is that the area of this mechanical platform would be 5%. And this is measured as a function of the area of the topmost full floor of the house. So the planning board agreed with the citizen petition. We had a lot of conversation with the petitioners and with the zoning board, and the planning board would like to recommend that the town amend the bylaw to basically allow these railings to be ineligible. And the text of that is in the italics in your summary sheet.
Was there any pushback from people that didn't want to do this?
I think most of the discussion was more on the, we were talking about the size of the platform and you know, the 5% limit. I think people were, there was a little bit of a disparity relative to size, but it wasn't, I didn't perceive an objection. I would ask Mary for your memory on that.
We didn't receive objections as you're asking. We did have quite a good conversation about potential impact on commercial or industrial development. And the thrust of this proposal is residential uses. And that was kind of where the discussion came in. Is this needed townwide or in certain districts? And there was a very, I think, a very good dialogue.
Yeah, I would say, yes. And so this is really limited to dwellings in residential districts, because commercial buildings would have their own bylaw requirements, and we didn't want this to be in conflict with that. So I would say it was a very proactive, positive discussion, and we were really appreciative. It's always great to see citizens proposing bylaws, and it was an excellent discussion.
Let's see if we have any questions. Paul?
This was generated with respect to those few quarters that were being compromised by people who lived in
Crow Point area.
varying topographies within the neighborhood.
Right.
Okay.
Are we going to see more of this, where houses along the waterfront are built on pilings or?
Well, I think that houses that are in the FEMA flood districts, in order to be rebuilt or newly built, would have to be built in such a way that they would not resist the flow of water in the event of a flood or an overly high tide. That tends to suggest that those houses would be at least 4 or 5 feet higher from the grade. I think the other thing that's happening too is with the averaging of front yard setbacks and other kinds of issues, the footprint of some of the houses is also getting larger. So there is a tendency in areas close to the water to raise the height of the houses for a better view.
I have an additional question. Sure. Just as a point of understanding, how is the height calculated in those areas where a house is built on a piling? Is it where the actual construction of the house starts, or is it the
My understanding of the bylaws is you take the average grade of the contact grade at the lowest level, and then it's 35 feet above that average grade. There's a diagram here in the bylaw that would show that.
Do you want to put it on just for a minute or two?
Sure, absolutely.
It's very clear.
The diagram is a great graphic. I think it explains it pretty clearly. But I think that piles or not, I don't think there's any added height for any of that. It's all a function of the ridge above the average grade of the lowest level, which is the 35 feet.
So it wouldn't be 5-foot piling, 35-foot high house, 3-foot, okay. All right, thanks.
That would be a way to get height.
I remember dealing with that. That was painful.
That was painful. I was on advisory when that happened.
When the graphic was reviewed and developed, yeah.
Painful.
Gary, would this, and you know, I don't need to know too much, would this citizen petition be spurred on from was it spurred on from an ongoing issue that existed recently down there?
It was like a lot of initiatives that we see, both in terms of citizen petitions and then also in our review of applications. We see certain issues that come up that need to be addressed. And there were a number of situations here where if you take this additional railing and it's basically not ineligible or eligible, then what you have a de facto screen on the top of the house, which makes the house much taller, and then it's blocking the view.
Of somebody behind them?
Of somebody behind them or further away from the water.
So my question is, if this is approved, and I don't know if it will be, but if it was approved at town meeting, are the properties that have recently been approved and probably in the last few years been approved, are they grandfathered in?
I believe that if a property is it's grandfathered if it meets the zoning bylaw requirements as of its permit date. So this would be houses that would be grandfathered from this bylaw change, but any house that came in for a permit after this, should it be voted in a town meeting, would have to comply with this, but it's not retroactive.
So if they come in for a permit, you may know, I don't, if they come in for a permit 6 months ago and they haven't got it signed off on, but it was, you know, approved from the zoning, would someone be able to come in and stop that because they didn't get a final sign off? Or I just don't want to get someone caught in the middle that's already been approved.
I don't think once an application comes in, as I understand it, once an application comes in under the bylaw that's applicable at the time of the application, that's the bylaw that controls through the whole permitting process. So there isn't a grandfathering or a shifting during the permitting process.
Right, it's in effect grandfather because it's the date of the application that controls.
That's right.
Okay.
Very good. Jim, come on up, though.
Jim Watson, 291 Rockland Street, a appreciator of views. But I'm just wondering if the purpose wouldn't be served by saying does not exempt opaque walls and railings. So that if there's a railing which is just a railing with very spaced pickets that keeps something from falling off that you can see through, it probably doesn't block a view. But a solid one, you know, does. So if I understand it properly, I would suggest amending it just to say an opaque wall or railing. Thanks.
First one was easy, sort of.
Sort of.
Thank you. Keep going.
Quite welcome. Our next article is Article V, which is FRD, which means Flexible Residential Development / multi-unit housing modifications. This zoning amendment article was proposed by the Planning Board, and the intent of this is that it would address potential conflicts and concerns that we have in earlier stated and articulated local preference criteria that is currently in our bylaw that isn't let's say, consistent with or in agreement with or in compliance with the state and or federal kinds of definitions of local preference. And so what we wanted to do is have a situation in the bylaw where we wouldn't have to constantly revise it to comply with further changes in that local preference criteria, but have it essentially address the intent of that. So, for example, in some of the sections we said, well, we could replace the current language and say, to the extent permitted by applicable law, local preference shall be given in the sale or rental of low and moderate income housing. Some of the existing language in our bylaw is pretty interesting in terms of its prose. It talks about perhaps extending local preference to people who are working at least 20 hours a week or have lived in the town for such a time. So it was kind of unique to a certain set of circumstances, but isn't really applicable now to the legislation that's in the state law and the federal law. So we thought that that was essentially a cleanup. The second part of this bylaw basically addresses the professionals who are approved to prepare preliminary flexible residential development plans for review by the town boards. And so what we wanted to add in this is that right now we have essentially it's a landscape professional architect registered in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What we wanted to do was update that and insert in and/or a professional civil engineer registered in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And the reason we wanted to do that is that in the full design and development and implementation and review for compliance with the town regulations, it's really the civil engineers have a very large role in that, so we wanted to extend the ability for a registered civil engineer to prepare these plans. So it seemed to be an appropriate response to how our current process is working.
Paul?
Ridgewood Estate, example of an FRD. It's a great idea, gives buffers in exchange for some added density. I wish we'd see more of it in town, but that's it so far.
I think the idea there too is, and I like the idea too, Paul, of the flexible residential development, because it gives some flexibility. Under a by right subdivision, you have a certain lot size based on the zoning district, and there's a lot of land dedicated to each house, but that land isn't necessarily open space. The nice thing about an FRD is it allows you to have as long as you can meet the by right requirements of a conventional subdivision, which determines the number of houses that could be built, you can then have a more creative approach to how the houses are situated so that you can have more open space and buffers. So I think it's very responsive to kind of the more I would say more open space, rural kind of character. So haven't seen that many of these. I think, what, Mary, are there 2 or 3?
Weathervane is another.
Weathervane is another one.
Weathervane.
Up on Beale Street is another one.
What about the Meadows?
Yes.
What about the Meadows?
We didn't have an FRD when that was.
No, it's but the Meadows would be a good example, even though it was before the FRD.
That's a, what's that, a planned unit development?
I think it was a planned unit development.
Yeah, before my time.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Pretty sure that's what it is.
Nope, I don't have any questions.
Cool.
Excellent.
Thank you. Want to go to the next one?
Yes, our next
Carol, are you doing okay with these?
I'm going to follow up with Mary later.
Okay.
No, it's not.
Our next article is Article W, Special Permit A3 Parking Determinations. And this is another planning board initiative. And the reason that we decided to look at this is that the way the current bylaw is worded, the planning board is having some difficulty voting on the special permit A3 parking determinations due to an unclear approval criteria. In our site plan review criteria, we have a list of components and requirements. It's very clear and very tangible. We thought that we should do the same in the A3 parking determination requirements. So in addition to some clerical and some typos and things that we corrected, essentially what we wanted to do was insert a new subsection 6, which summarizes the criteria and makes it clear. And that criteria is in your handout, and I'll read that. It's item 7 would be inserting a new subsection 6 into section Roman 5A, which states approval criteria. an applicant is not entitled to a special permit, the planning board may approve such an application for a special permit A3 parking determination if it finds, in fact, in its judgment, that A, the parking is sufficient in quantity to meet the needs of the proposed project, B, pedestrian access and circulation have been provided for, C, new driveways have been designed to maximize sightline distances to the great extent possible, D, it is impractical to meet these standards and that a waiver of these regulations will not result in or worsen parking and traffic problems on site or on the surrounding streets or adversely affect the value of abutting lands and buildings. And lastly, E, it is determined that the granting of relief is consistent with the intent of this bylaw and will not increase the likelihood of an accident or impair access and circulation. So we thought it was more concise, it was clear, it's also performance and prescriptive in terms of the requirements, and we felt that it would allow a much more appropriate and clear site plan A3 parking determination review. So it's really a cleanup article.
Paul?
You know, this whole discussion brings me back to when we were fighting to get this in, and I think it's one of the better bylaws that the planning board has used since it was approved at town meeting. So tightening it up and continuing to keep it with a vitality, I think, is a good thing. So.
Great, thank you.
Paul?
Gary, just so everybody's clear, including me, special permit A3 parking, can we just maybe understand what that entails, or maybe give us an example? Or
Well, I'm thinking that, for example, when the restaurant down on the waterfront, for example, came in and they had a site plan review, this is the Red Roasters.
Oh, the coffee shop.
Coffee shop went in, and so with that kind of an application, not only do we have a bylaw review, but we also had a site plan review relative to parking, and we had to determine the number of spaces, and we had to make sure that the handicap spaces were provided for, and that basically that it met the program requirements of what they were applying for. That's a small example or a well-known example.
so, you said we're just cleaning it up. I mean, so in other words, that doesn't change, but there's been some modification, is that?
It doesn't change, but it's really, the original language we thought wasn't as concise. We're not changing the intent. We were just basically summarizing and streamlining the language so that it would be clearer in terms of our review.
And I think that's my last question, is this new subsection 6 in section 5A, I think you listed as item 7, the A, B, C, D, and E, are these all inclusive as to the criteria, or is it individual? In other words, is it or is it and?
It's and.
I think it's and.
Okay.
I would ask Mary that it's and is there anything in 7? I don't think there's anything 7 that is different than the others, but what we were doing is basically changing the overall body of the language to include these.
Right, some of the language, some of this revision is just kind of reordering where the text was and having one section in this part of the bylaw that says approval criteria. So when an applicant says, what do I have to do, what are you looking at, we can clearly point to it. So a lot of this language is not new language, it's just relocated language or reordered. There is some new language in here meant to clarify what the board is looking for, because the applicants can't produce what the planning board and the town is looking for if they don't have a clear understanding. So that was what the intent was. They are ands, and if I may, special permit A3s are not required for every project, but they are required when the parking, if our bylaw doesn't list the parking requirement for a particular use, then an A3 is required so that the board can have a discussion with the applicant about the adequacy of the parking. They can also be used to the applicant's benefit if there's a development with shared parking and they'd like a reduction in the parking requirement to pave less. The planning board is always encouraging applicants to not overpave, and they're very receptive to discussions with applicants who come in and say, your bylaw says I need this, however, this is what, you know, my project will require. And then the board and the applicant can engage in that dialogue. And that's the way the A3 is used as a tool, I think, to the benefit of the town.
That happened in the shipyard, Paul. Yeah. It was a special permit A2, or A3, A2, which triggered site plan review. The ZBA issued their permit, so there were several overlapping permits. There was a shared parking analysis there. And sometimes these projects don't fit neatly into any category, so I think the flexibility the planning board is requesting is appropriate.
Thank you.
Since you mentioned Red Eye Roasters, now the special permit A3, there's nothing that I see here, and maybe it's somewhere else, that if they have to buy parking, how is that valued? Or how does that happen?
When you say buy parking, when in the parking that was provided for that, that application was basically parking that was within the site context of their building. If you're thinking about shared parking, for example, downtown in the overlay district, we have a certain percentage reduction on parking requirements in that district, and we also have a requirement that if a building has no available parking, it's street parking, and they want to do certain uses, they have to find parking, a shared parking. We don't specifically say it's purchased, but they have to find shared parking. If I have it correctly, I think I have that correctly.
And when they do the shared parking, who do they negotiate with to maybe exchange money or whatever?
Well, they'd have to find parking in either a parcel that they own, or they'd have to make an arrangement on a parcel that somebody else owns.
Within a certain distance of the site.
That's what I was going to ask. Does it have to be contiguous?
It's typically within 500 feet.
Okay. This is a tricky one.
Those guys do it all the time, so it's...
Well, for us dropping out of the sky.
That's why they have their sandbox and we have us.
This is true. Do we have to pay for parking in our sandbox?
It depends.
Okay. Okay, the next one.
The next
You
one.
can ask any questions from the audience, excuse me. Okay.
The next one is Article X, and it's titled Commercial Uses under Section Roman 3A4. This is another planning board initiative, a zoning bylaw amendment. And this came, like many of our initiatives, came from looking at the specifics of a certain application. And this is, this proposed zoning article will amend the uses set forth in Section 3A. And what it does is it works within, for uses proposed to be located within the industrial park district. And so, for example, the industrial park district in South Hingham, for example, is South Shore Park. It's an older industrial park that now is seeing new uses. And so the buildings are being repurposed for new uses. A number of the new uses that are coming in are typically taking small portions of the buildings. New businesses start in older buildings. And what we're seeing is that, for example, if one wanted to put in a use that's not typically listed right now in the industrial park, and its use has a different requirement for setbacks, for side yard, front yard, and rear yard setbacks, what we're finding that, for example, in this application that came in front of us was essentially a veterinarian facility, and the requirements for that was 40 feet from the front side and rear lot lines, whereas in other uses within the industrial park district had a 35-foot setback. And so we thought that, so here we have a conflict, allowing the use, a new use within that district. It's not inconsistent with any of the other uses, but had a prescriptive requirement of a larger setback. We thought we could allow the current setback of the industrial park to apply without having any detriment or any, it would be no less consistent in terms of complying with the intent. the bylaw. Now, the other thing that's also, I think, is an important point is that any residential use or any industrial park use that is adjacent to a residential district has to have a 100-foot setback. So none of those setbacks are changed. This is only for uses within the industrial park. And the same minimum 2 acres and other kinds of criteria apply. So it's really clarifying a prescriptive setback difference.
So there's no new uses here specifically? Let me ask it straight up. No tattoo parlors?
There's no new uses.
No, this is...
Okay.
No.
Just thought I'd ask.
And in the table of uses, all the current uses basically are still as stated. So we're not... We learned last year about our...
Excellent.
This is a situation where you have a developed industrial park built to the 35-foot setback in many instances. And then we have uses that are looking to locate there, and we have this special requirement that they have a 40-foot setback. And so what do? Do you get a variance? That's not really appropriate. Is that use acceptable in the industrial park? And if so, could we look at the setback? And that's the exercise that the planning board went through. No new uses, just looking for a way to not stop uses from going into the industrial park.
So most, because I agree with you, most of the buildings there are aging. So they're at the 35-foot setback. I've never noticed. I'll have to...
Some of them have a 35-foot front yard setback. They were constructed that way, not all of them. However, one of them is a multi-unit condo, industrial condominium, and has tenants that want to go in. And we certainly, the planning board did not want to dampen that effect if the uses were not detrimental.
Right.
Paul?
No, I have no questions.
Oh, you guys are on a roll.
Thank you.
Normally, these things take like a half an hour apiece. Next.
The next one's more detailed. The next one is Article Z. This is completion of multi-unit developments. This initiative was proposed by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the intent of this amendment is to clarify the submissions required to assess the completeness of multi-use developments and thus permit the issuance of certificates of occupancy for these multi-unit residential developments under Section 1C-2 in the bylaw, and create a process whereby the Board of Appeals may grant relief from those requirements in appropriate circumstances and remove extraneous language. So, for example, under the current bylaw, the building commissioner may not issue a certificate of occupancy for more than 85% of the units in a multi-unit development until all the details of the approved development plan have been completed. In our current bylaw, Section 1C, the term "all details" is not really specifically defined, and it has led to some confusion in reviewing these developments relative to the percentage of completion. What this does is provide, this amendment would provide a new definition in consistent terms which clarify the intent that the completion requires all site work improvements to have been done, and it spells out the documentation needed to show that completion. It also allows the Board of Appeals to grant a special permit partially waiving the 85% limitation on these certificates of occupancy and authorizing the building commissioner to issue certificates of occupancy for up to 95% of the dwelling units prior to the completion of the site work improvements. As-built are required and other controls are required, so we felt that this flexibility, and when the planning board reviewed this, we agreed with the zoning board that we felt that this kind of flexibility would be beneficial to the implementation of the bylaw requirements by the building commissioner relative to reviewing the conditions and compliance relative to the certificate of occupancy. So, and it gave more specificity as to what the documentation would be and what the certifications would be so that the town is protected. Did you want to add anything to this, Mary?
So I think you summed it up quite nicely. One, with the multi-family developments, as a project nears closeout, one of the things that there's a great deal of scrutiny on is this project completed? Have all of the public elements been completed? And how much of the developer's remaining units or profit, when you get to the end of the project, it's mostly profit for the developer. You have residents that are living there that are saying, when is my site going to be finished? And the building commissioner and the zoning board of appeals are the people who are monitoring that. And we've had many developments in the past 2 years move towards closeout. And that's really brought to light the vagueness of this section of the bylaw. And our role here is to make sure that a project is completed in accordance with the plans. However, we have to be responsive to the residents. And so right now, the building commissioner stops issuing COs at 85%, unless all details of the development can be proven. The zoning board has been in a position where residents of these developments have come to them and said, could you please let the developer build a few more units before they finish the road? Because we don't want to accept a road that's had all this heavy equipment driven over it just because of your 85%. Is there a way that you can work with the developer? And so the zoning board put a lot of thought and work into this and really tried to spell out a process for relief. And it still says at 85% the building commissioner stops issuing COs. But essentially, if the developer wants to continue building units prior to the final course of pavement or final public area completion, maybe the final little parklet or open space area, the landscaping, they can apply for a special permit A1 from the zoning board of appeals and have a conversation with the zoning board about their schedule and the timing, and really leave it up to the jurisdiction of the zoning board of appeals to determine how many more COs can they have and how will that work with their project. And all of that stops at 95%, so there's still a safety buffer for the town, but it really gives the zoning board of appeals the flexibility and the definitions to do what they're kind of doing on an ad hoc basis already, out of necessity.
And does this apply to something like a weather vane, or more like Back River condos and the shipyard?
It would be Back River and the shipyard. In fact, it's come up there, and Black Rock.
The separate lots over
Okay.
Beale Street.
They are,
Separate lots, yeah.
okay, with common space. So this is really kind of condos stacked on each other, whether it's side to side, or...
Or it could be a multi-use development with attached or detached structures, whether it's a subdivision or whether it's a planned unit development or...
Ridgewood Crossing be one? Okay.
Is 5% enough of a hook? I mean, there's a balance, right? That's what you're trying to get.
Right, we're trying to get to a balance.
They're comfortable that that's enough?
Well, they're not guaranteed to get to 95%. At 85% occupancy, they apply for a special permit A1, and they have a conversation with the zoning board of appeals, and they have to provide a certification of their engineer with regard to the status of the improvements. They have to really go in and make a case to the zoning board. And so it's not guaranteed.
Right.
The zoning board may say, well, you can go up to 87% or 90%. It's not just, you go to 95%.
Right, and they have to prove that they've met the...
Okay. Was there any pushback on this one?
I don't think there was.
There wasn't any public comment at all on this one.
People are still reading it.
Well, if anyone has questions on the bylaws, they're welcome to come into my office, and we're happy to talk to them.
Well, it appears you've only got one more. I'm sorry.
Nope, I'm good. I'm good.
No more questions on that one? Cool. All right, last one.
The last one is Article BB, which is personal wireless services, and this is another zoning board of appeals amendment article, a proposal. And essentially what this does is amend Section 3F and Section 5E as applicable to include public safety as an intent and purpose of the personal wireless service bylaw. and also to clarify the requirements of the bylaw as they apply to these cell towers. What's happening in terms of the federal regulations in terms of cell tower permitting is that the height of the tower can be increased over time without achieving a local permitting. So in other words, a typical tower that one might see that's 100 feet to get the kind of radius of transmission could be enlarged or increased in vertical height with antennas and other kinds of apparatus to, for example, 120 feet. And one of the concerns that the boards have had in our review of these cell towers is that we talk about the setback from the top of the tower to a point of a radius if the tower had fallen flat. So if you were, and that's called the fall zone. So if you were to have a 100-foot tower and it were to fall, you'd want to make sure that there was nothing that it would hit within that 100-foot zone. If they can increase these towers by due to going through the federal regulation process and they increase the tower to 120 feet, now we have a fall zone issue where potentially anything that's between 100 and 120 could be at risk. So the idea here is to, in our bylaw, have the ability to increase these fall zones more for safety, and we've seen that in 2 of the applications that have come up.
I think this is the best one of all of them.
Is there any issue with respect to preemption?
In terms of when you say preemption, you mean
like a federal statute trumping local ordinance?
Well, I think what we're doing is we're saying that in order to maintain the safety zone, we're adding the 10% or 20 feet, which is greater, because we don't anticipate that future towers will be higher than that, but allows us to give the fallback distance, but not be in conflict with the federal regulation allowing the increase in height. That answers, does that?
I don't know how high those things are, but I know as you go by, where's Newton Highlands there? I mean, those babies are massive.
Yeah, those are,
so
I don't know how they dealt with those.
I totally understand the rationale and agree. You don't want to build something that's going to fall in a house.
Right.
I just know that the federal government and Congress has expressed some strong preferences to see these things placed in, as you know, so
Right.
just wondering if we're just asking if this is
Sure,
something that's got to be a problem if you try to impose that as a condition.
In a way, it's kind of a reaction to the federal regulations, because the federal regulations say that once there's a tower there, that proponent can increase the height as long as it's not a substantial increase.
Yes, yeah.
And so this is to kind of protect the town from that, to say, okay, then we're going to have a slightly greater setback, anticipating that once this is permitted, your unsubstantial increase of 15 feet may happen. And that increase in height does not trigger local permitting again, per the federal regulations.
I think the one behind Penniman Hill is 80 feet.
It's 80 feet.
So, I mean, if that boosted itself to 120 without a permit, without any oversight at all, it could do that?
I don't believe that it could go that high. I forget the exact language that Joe Fisher had mentioned, but it's a minor increase.
I thought it was 10%.
Could it do it in sequences, though?
That was going to be my question. Could they do it like 10 feet one year and then come back the next year and do another 10?
That I do not know.
Or is this something that's going to evolve over time?
My sense is the federal regulations on cell communications are evolving, or changing. I'm not sure I'd say they're evolving.
Are there any communities that have this type of bylaw in place now?
I think there are, I couldn't quote them, but I think in the discussions, we can find out for you. In the discussions, I think there were references to other precedents, but I don't have the specifics, but we can follow up on that.
The reason I'm asking is that,
Sure.
someone may have blazed the trail for us ahead of time, and we may have seen some pushback from the Fed, agencies or not, as Paul was saying, there might be. I was just curious, sometimes someone else, I mean, not always, we may be the lead, but somebody else may have done it, and we may have learned something
Sure.
from their success or whatever.
Why don't we, we'll research that and get back to you.
There's quite a bit that's been over the last year coming out of MMA on cell towers. In fact, they've had some seminars because they are becoming more frequently placed closer to residential areas.
Yeah, we've got one, we're behind the water company right
Yes.
now. And
Yep. There was one, I don't know what the status of the hearing is, or the permit for it, behind where,
New North has one.
yeah, where CrossFit is. They're, I can't remember the name of the plaza.
Lincoln Street?
Thank you, yes.
I believe that court case has completed,
Right.
is my understanding.
I don't
What does
know the
that mean?
outcome.
I think it was favorable. I believe it was favorable for the town,
Excellent.
Good.
but don't quote me.
And the court case was a challenge to citing it there?
Yeah.
Oh, is that because the, oh, okay.
It was very
Getting
close
up.
to
Okay.
it was neighborhood and close.
Well, I remember there was discussion, I didn't want to get too deep, and I just was making sure I understood.
I like this one.
Great.
So that's it?
Those
Jim,
are
come on
our-
up.
Is any pertinent device in the blades?
I didn't hear you, Jim.
Because I wasn't speaking to the microphone.
No, I just,
Jim Watson, 291 Rockland Street, a fan of windmills because I can see and hear the one in the Hull landfill, and it's such a nice sound at night, whoosh, whoosh, which it lulls you to sleep. But anyway, that isn't the question. This refers to the vertical height of the tower, inclusive of any appurtenant device. Most bylaws I've read refer to the blades, you know, the maximum height of the tower plus the
These
blade
are cell
extended.
towers.
these are the cell towers, Jim. This wouldn't be
Oh,
windmills.
for Christ's sakes, I'm sorry.
This wouldn't be a windmill.
So what would it be?
It's a cell tower.
I know, what would be on top of the tower?
The top would be
Antenna.
just the vertical antennas, you know, the
Yeah, yeah.
pole antennas, the thin poles.
Sometimes they put them out to the
Right.
side.
They'll do side arms, and then they'll do the vertical, thin pole
Higher than the
antenna.
tower itself.
Yeah, and
Okay,
they'll be
thanks.
20 feet taller than the main mast of the tower.
Sorry, I was reading it as something it was.
That's all right, well, they don't move,
Okay, I
but,
meant to be the first person.
Thank you for
Right.
being here, Jim.
right.
That'll be the new rumor.
Oh,
Right.
right, that'll be taken, we'll hear that in town tomorrow. Any more questions on this? Good questions.
Yeah, good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Very
informative.
very
Thanks,
much.
Gary. Thanks, Mary.
Quite
I
welcome.
hope everybody listening at home and people watching the reruns
Knock 'em dead in
will,
April.
will pay attention to this so that you know what you're voting on at town meeting. So thank you two very much.
Thank you for having us. Right, have a good evening.
Okay. Let me just repeat that we are not discussing the harbor warrant articles tonight. And Ted could not be here. When all of these came about, we took our cue from the town administrator that these could be funded. Now that all of the funding is known, and the amount of money that is going to drag down what we call fund balance, I think some of us are concerned and would like to go through and see if there are other funding options. The drawdown on the unassigned portion of fund balance, and I asked Ted, when we do have this session again, to give a course 101 fund balance. So it's a little tricky, and when you hear it, you kind of have to hear it twice. But we would like to look at what are the options available, and Ted's the guru on finance, that perhaps there are options other than using fund balance. So we'll hopefully schedule that for next week. Now, do you want to say anything?
You know, I think we're getting really late. The warrant, I saw that email from the moderator encouraging us to get our collective acts together. It's a lot of pressure on advisory here as well, because they take their cue from us. So, I mean, we've got an ambitious agenda in the harbor.
We do.
There's no disputing that. And when I spoke to this issue last week, I did raise the issue of sequencing because I think that kind of ties into this conversation that we anticipated having tonight.
I'm hoping we will be able to have that piece of the conversation as well as the funding.
I just want to give our colleagues in the advisory committee a fair opportunity, and I'm beginning to seriously question whether we're pushing this too hard to get to a town meeting this year, at least with respect to one of the issues.
I don't think we disagree, but there's several pieces to that. The chair of the advisory committee has said that she needs the new appraisal. There's going to be, as Ted mentioned last week, the town is going to do its own appraisal. We have an appraisal right now from the seller, which is very well done, and it's done by somebody that is extremely well known in town and respected. But we're going to get a second appraisal. She needs that by the 7th, and they're going to vote on the 9th. So we are, in conjunction with that, we do have to look at how do we fund all of this. And there, I agree with you, we're pushed for time, but I think it has to be done before we hit town meeting floor. And the year I was chair of advisory was the lowest number in fund balance. I don't intend to go back there.
Good.
I watched it hemorrhage, and we're not going to let it do that again. But, Paul, we need options in front of us. And it is, time's kind of crunchy, but we can do this. Mr. G? I'm sorry.
I just don't want to create our own crises, that's all.
There's plenty around. We don't
Right.
have to do our own.
Right. We don't
Thank you very
need to go
much.
looking for them.
I know. They find us. Mr. G?
I appreciate both of your comments, and I do share them, and I think what I'll just see where we go in terms of, with our town administrator. I spoke to him today, and I'm sure we all will continue to speak to him and find out where we are in the timeline and make some decisions soon.
And I don't think, Betty, we don't have any new numbers for snow and ice and roof
We do
clearing.
not.
I'm almost afraid to ask.
I haven't gotten an update from Randy recently. We'll have that for you next week.
And then we need the school piece on top of it for the total town, but I don't think it's going to go down, do you?
Chances are not.
Okay. Matters not anticipated within 48 hours. I don't think we have any of those this week. Appointments, what do we have? I should say, Tom Hoffman has declined the Recreation and Fields Master Plan, but he has recommended, and we all got a letter, that the Vice President of Youth Football be appointed in his place. So that's one appointment. And in conjunction with that, the Fields Committee met for the first time, and everybody's on the same page. It's really wonderful. And in fact, one of the things we're going to ask the audience watching, and the two Pauls, is it was decided that we would like to add, and this is the collective we, the big we, the committee, we would like to add someone on the committee that is not involved in either recreation or sports, or, as Vicki Donlin put it, doesn't even like that stuff. So if you know anybody, and I can't imagine not liking sports, I'm sorry, please let us know. You don't like sports?
I didn't say that. I'm
laughing.
I'm amused. Everybody's thinking the same way. Well, wow, that's a shocker.
It happens.
Yeah, I'll say.
So we should take advantage
Yeah.
of it. So if anybody knows somebody, or if you would like to be added to this committee, it's really a great committee, and we look forward to hearing from you. So with that, should we do appointments?
Sure. I'll move to appoint Sue Izzo to replace Tom Hoffman to the Recreation Fields Master Plan.
All right.
What was that?
Here's my issue there.
Okay.
Is this Arthur Gorham's daughter? Do you know?
I have no idea. What does that mean?
Well,
She's somebody's daughter.
my problem with this is this. We have like a talent bank, and we invite people to step forward at the end of each town meeting and put their names in for consideration, and we spent some considerable time and effort this year interviewing people for these various committees that they might be interested in, and not all of them have been selected to sit on these committees. And here we are, you know, we did some appointments that, you know, the two of you wanted to put on this committee. Most of those people didn't participate in the talent bank interview. Susan Rizzo, I think I know her from when we were kids, I think, if I'm not confusing her with someone else. But, you know, they've never put their name in. And I think that there's a process that's got to be acknowledged and respected, because what's the incentive to go through that if after you've done so you're watching other people be appointed to these various committees that don't go through it? And, you know, with all due respect, I know you think you got a bunch of superstar, all-stars, I think is, and
Call them superstars if you want.
superstars,
Yeah.
sure, superstar, all-stars.
Okay.
But a lot of those guys never went through any kind of interview. I never met them. I know some of them by name. You know, some of them obviously, like the guys that are well-known, I know. But to me, this is problematic when we do it like this. That's why I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute. Do you want this to keep happening? Because what kind of weight is this given when a recommendation is made if there's a perception that this is just a, you know, a fixed,
Well,
you know what I mean?
I do, I get, but I think one of the
That's all.
things that it was, I think Irma said, I don't think I said it, but I certainly support if there were other people that were interested in this committee. But it does make some sense, Paul, when you have people that have a very good familiarity with the fields, whether it be the football, because they're there day in and day out. And Tom Hoffman is a great example because he's been working tirelessly for all this, you know, these fields for many years. And you know, maybe we could focus on the football end of it. And Sue Rizzo, then I've got to know her recently, and you know, she is as dedicated as Tom, and so it makes sense because we have people that have some familiarity with the fields in the issues. But I don't have any problem with trying to expand the committee, you know, to beyond if somebody comes in, and whether it's one person or two people or whatever that may want to have some input in it. But it does make, it's logical to me to have people that have familiarity with the pluses and minuses, the day-to-day operation. So I don't disagree with what you're saying.
I don't quarrel with that
I think
either,
there's a
Paul.
way to get there, but, you know, Sue Rizzo, I think she's a good fit, and I
too.
think that we're always, me personally, always willing to look at and being inclusive of people that with a different perspective. So if somebody wants to come and be involved, I would probably be supportive of it.
And we actually have a second person from the school committee. Ed Schreier has a very deep interest in this, so he's coming to the meetings. And the reason Tom Hoffman was picked, we went to each of the major sports groups. So you want somebody familiar with the funding, the schedules.
I'm not quarreling with, but here it is. You guys did this. I didn't have any
No,
input in
actually,
that.
it was more me going out and getting the names from each of the sports groups.
Which is true, Paul. I wasn't going to, like, you know, completely disagree, but I was not
No, I
involved
did it.
in the process, but I was familiar with the names, and I did speak to a couple people that expressed interest. Beyond that, I mean, I was just being agreeable. It made sense to me, so, and I knew a number of the people and what they brought to the table, so I was comfortable with it, but I certainly didn't search out these people,
I
just
did.
so you know.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I just remembered the experience we had up at Ward Street. And, you know, that, I thought what was originally proposed there was a good idea, to be candid. And I think it blew up in large part because there was some significant neighborhood resistance to it. And, you know, if we're going to be making, you know, insights and evaluations and recommendations that affect the neighborhoods adjacent to these field areas, wherever they might be, beyond where they are now, I think the neighborhood participation or the voice has got to be a robust one and not just a token presence on a committee that's overweighted by people who have vested interests in these sports activities.
Well,
That's all I'm saying.
Before any questions come forward or decisions come forward, this is the first time we've been able to get everybody in a room that has some portion of recreation and sports. And the first thing that's going to be done is an inventory.
Sure.
And then, what do we need? What do we have? And we're looking at today, but we're also looking 5 years out. And that's why it was important to get the people that run these leagues and these particular sports. Nobody's going to say, Paul, in your backyard, I'm putting an ice rink. Although I think that would be a really good place.
Maybe in the side yard.
You think?
Yeah. There's no parking there, though. You need a special permit A3.
Oh, we're not going there.
Why? They
But,
just redo the criteria, so.
just getting all of this information out, creating a master plan of what we need, so the next time a conversation happens about space or somebody wanting a field, you've got the backup behind it.
Yeah, okay, but that brings up a good point. There's been some talk that there was a master plan done in the harbor, maybe in 2007.
2000, yeah.
The problem with that is it was a report, and it wasn't circulated amongst all the stakeholders down there, so it doesn't have the validity in the eyes of some. So to be calling it a master plan, I think, is problematic. And if a recommendation made by a committee that's perceived to be self-interested is done, you're running into the same kind of problem, I think. That, I don't have an objection to what the mission is, but I firmly believe that if it's balanced, it's going to have a better result. That's what I'm saying here.
We'll take more people on the committee. But
It's going to be like the Tower of Babel there.
No, I don't think it is.
Not to, disparage anybody, but you're going to have, how big a committee can you have?
As big as you need.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I mean, I in my brief conversations about it, I mean, this is not we're not recreating the wheel here. Basically, there's a lot of people that have been involved in the issue in the periphery, that have been looking into ways to, make things better. It's been talked about for a number of years, and I think this thing is not, and so what I'm saying is that if there are a few extra people in there, I think they can keep focused enough, give different perspectives, and come up with some type of good proposals. And all I can tell you is, and you probably know this better than me, is that in this town, there is a lot of involvement by citizens on different levels and different committees and different oversight. And if we saw that in with the fields and everything else, there's a lot of input from a lot of people. So we will not suffer from a lack of input from a diverse group, but at least we're moving forward. And we're open to some suggestions, whether it be from you or everybody else, and also new members. But, I look at it as a positive. We're moving forward. We're starting something that people have been asking us to do for a number of years.
And everybody in the room really wants to do this, and they're very diverse groups.
Okay, I think I've said enough. I've made my point.
We'll take more people on the committee.
You know what, I'm going to leave this to you, and let's see how you do.
Okay, so can we put Sue, because we do need a youth football person on there. And
If she's Arthur Gorham's daughter, I'll agree to that.
Oh my God, I don't know who.
Well, for discussion's sake, she must.
She's Arthur Gorham's daughter, yeah.
How about I abstain then for purposes of the vote, because I don't think, I think it's her, but I'm not sure.
No, that's fine.
That's fine.
And there is a woman that I met when I was doing something with Tom Hoffman, and I found her to be dedicated to the whole football thing, and
It's probably Sue.
impressively so.
So I made a motion.
All right, I'll second it. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstention?
I will abstain.
Okay, done. All right, next, do you want to do Leslie?
I think I know Leslie.
Do you want to do the vote?
Sure. Nominate Leslie Badger as Inspector of Animals for the town of Hingham.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, what else do we have?
It's votes.
3 cable votes that
The cable
the
votes.
committee
Do you want to do
presented to you.
those?
Sure.
Why don't you just,
I move to approve the use of $7,050 of cable capital funds for cable equipment upgrades to the second floor meeting rooms in Town Hall.
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I move to approve the use of $18,104 of cable funds for a TV production class for Hingham High School students in fiscal year 2016.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Move to approve the use of cable funds not to exceed $10,000 for the replacement of 4 Macintosh computers used for production editing in Hingham High School for the Education Channel.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. One other announcement, there is the official December 18th minutes of the executive session have been approved for release. Ted sent a letter to Rick Padoni, Board President of Lincoln Maritime. He has awarded, under the request for proposals for a sailing and rowing program on Barnes Wharf, the RFP, he has awarded that to the Lincoln Maritime Center. And we'll be talking about this a little bit more later. Okay.
That was the only bid.
That was the only response to the RFP. So Selectmen and Town Administrator reports. Betty, do you have anything
I have
in place
nothing.
of Ted?
Nothing this evening.
Want to go first?
Sure.
All right. And then you.
Bob, could you just highlight the logo that I've put up on the board? And while we're waiting for that, I just wanted to mention that this logo was produced by students at Hingham High School, I believe members of the SAD group, and it's symbolic of our mission, working together as part of the Hingham Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. So we met last night. We adopted the logo. We adopted a mission statement, which I will make available to Carol Meyer with the Journal. We have our name established, and we're working on objectives and core principles and a number of items that are going to help us focus on obviously preventing substance abuse in our community and working with other communities, and we're very, very enthused by it. So we're making progress. It's a slow process, I will say. Ed Jacobs from Plymouth County District Attorney's Office and Muriel Paul from Learn to Cope came in and spoke to us last night, and Arlene Goldstein is going to be helping us with organizing our structure. And so there's a lot of things, and the group is actually growing every week. We had a gentleman, a pharmacist, come in last night, and that's going to be so helpful because I know with the legislation that's in place that in terms of trying to minimize and stop the abuse of prescription drug prescriptions, we had Ed Jacobs and police, the service officer, Rob Ramsey. I'm sorry, and they made visits to the numerous CVS and Rite Aid and so forth, and the pharmacies in town, and they said they were very well received. So it sounds like we have a very cooperative effort from some businesses, especially the pharmacies, and I'm really enthused by where we've come. So that'll all be produced, if I may, and I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder, but I was at the game on Sunday.
Me too.
And I saw Irma at the game, and it was one for the ages. It was one of the most exciting hockey games that you could ever imagine going to, where we had a freshman tipping in the winning goal at 1:21 left in the third period, Marshall Terres, and we had a team that played fantastic, but it's worth mentioning because I've read it, is Matthew Personini, the goalie, was so good that night. It was beyond even description to see the goals that he kept out of the net in that third period and basically won the game. But I just want to congratulate Tony Messina and the whole coaching staff. I want to congratulate all the players. It's a memory that'll last a lifetime, and you made us so proud in Hingham, not only by winning it, but by your efforts through the year. And I congratulate the families as well. It was a wonderful, wonderful night.
I echo everything Paul said. It was like watching a college game. It really was. The play was amazing. Arlington Catholic was a bigger team, but you would never have known it with our team. The other thing I was so proud of, there were so many Hingham people in red and black and white and the cute T-shirts they've got. It was an amazing, amazing night. I want to go back. I want to do this again. So Tony, another year. You want to go?
Sure. I'll extend my congratulations to the team. I wasn't there, but I was with you in spirit.
We made enough noise for you then.
I think, my children all played sports in high school and in college, and in fact continue to do so now. My son is a soldier down in Louisiana, and one of the things he's done is started a softball and rugby team with his troops as an outlet. It's good to burn off energy and good for morale. So anyhow, I want to speak to something a little different than that, though. There's a meeting coming up next week, and anybody who's interested can reach out to Mary Savage Dunham. And I believe it's on March 23rd, and it's going to be here at the Town Hall, I believe, and DOT and the State Planning Agency is coming in to discuss the concept of a toll lane down Route 3, which to me is, it's on the 23rd, is very exciting.
Concom meeting.
Because this would be in addition to the, the 2 lanes in each direction on the highway that we have now on Route 3. But this is something that we've been talking about in terms of, the capacity of the roadway and the attractiveness of drawing in businesses to this area. There's an inherent limitation with the 2 lanes in each direction. Anybody who commutes to Boston on Route 3 or crosses Derby Street on their way to work, such as myself, and says, I am very happy I don't have to go that way to work. So this may be the opening discussion that involves, this town. And the South Hingham Working Group has been circling all around this issue and trying to figure out, how to plan in reaction to what the state's going to do. We're hoping to bring in somebody from the state DOT to speak to the kind of deliberative process they go through when they decide on whether to support an improvement request. So that's out there. I mean, this is over the horizon talk. I don't see this happening in the next 5 years or so, but planning is something that, occurs 10 years down the road, too. So just want the public to know that that's something that is happening.
I think the date might be the 26th.
Okay. Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
It was the same date as the Selectmen's meeting, unless what I got was wrong information.
No, you're probably right.
Do you want the flyer? I'll send you the flyer.
The 26th, just in case.
Okay.
I think it's in the morning.
It's 9 to 11.
It is.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm in court that day, so got a couple of members of the committee going, which is good.
So it is the 26th. I just wanted to-
Okay. Yeah, March 26th, folks, here at the Town Hall.
That's it? A few things. The Baker-Polito administration announced today a Winter Recovery Assistance Program, and the acronym they're using is WARP. It is, or I'm sorry, RAP. RAP. It is a $30 million program for winter recovery assistance, and it is for potholes and all the pavement cracking, surface defects, paving projects, repair or replacement of damaged signs, guardrails, storm drains, and line striping. We don't have any of that, right? This is very exciting. This is in addition to our Chapter 90 money. And Hingham, if all this goes through, gets an additional $112,000, $112,638 to be exact. And that's in addition to the additional Chapter 90 money we got from the $100 million extra that Governor Baker released as soon as he took the governorship. So this is very exciting for us. The trick is all of this has to be spent by June 30th, this $30 million or the 112,000. So that should be really great for all the potholes and stuff, because I know our street is brutal. And I know other streets, or Lincoln Street is bad. So this will be extra money, so that will be good. Several things. The Snap Pizza Palooza, March 25th at the Hingham High School cafeteria from 5:30 to 8. $10 a person or $30 a family, and it's pizza, and they're going to pick the best pizza, and they're going to have an all-star cast of judges. Also tomorrow night, St. Patrick's Day party at the Community Center, 6:30 to 10, $25 a person, buffet, beer and wine, music, and dancing. The step dancing, I can't wait to see that.
I'm very excited for this. It's going to be a lot of fun, and if anybody doesn't know about it and you hear about it now, you're welcome to come down and join us. It'll be quite an event.
It'll be fun. Hingham High School class of 2017, I don't know if Bob can pick that up. They're sponsoring the 28th Annual Antique Show and Sale on this coming Saturday and Sunday at the Hingham Middle School. Please join them if you can. There are $1 off tickets downstairs in our town clerk's office, and they look like that if you want to swing by.
How much are the tickets?
I think they're $6 or something, 5 or 6. They're nominally priced. The Hingham High School Green Team has created a video called Slash the Trash. It is absolutely hysterical. They've done a lot of great work over at the high school with the Green Team, and this was competition for, at lunchtime, who could do the most recycling and separate all the trash, and it was all the different sports teams. And it's 10 or 15 minutes. It's absolutely worth watching, and the prize was calzones. Very good. The 34th World Indoor Rowing Championship was held on March 1st. Ellie Snow won a first place in adaptive rowing. She's awesome. I've seen this young woman row. Just another example, Betsy Harling won 3rd overall in the women's senior lightweight category. There were, I think, 25 people that won 1st, 2nd, 3rd place. So Hingham was very well represented, so thank you to our great rowing organization and the people that make it up.
I just have one other thing I'd like to add.
Okay.
I don't want to put Betty Foley on the spot, but John Hersey made a statement earlier this evening, and Ms. Foley has let us know that she's going to be retiring, and I just can't say with enough sincerity that she is one of the finest employees that this town has been fortunate to have. She served in a very important, delicate position where discretion and judgment are critically important, and she's done a fantastic job. So, Betty, I can't thank you enough for your service to the town. It's just remarkable work, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you.
We are.
Betty, I echo those. Obviously, we haven't known each other a long time, but I'll tell you, it's been a pleasure to get to know you and to work with you. You're a professional and a wonderful person, so my pleasure.
I met you, oh my God, how many years ago?
Quite a few, Irma.
A few. We won't go back, but it was in the old town hall building. Yep. So it's going to be strange not having you around, but thank you for everything. Well, thank you again, but
Thank you.
Great service.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. Okay. I recommend the board adjourn to executive session to, 1, act under the provisions of Mass General Law 30A, paragraph 21, 2.A.7 to comply with the open meeting law and conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. The board will not resume open session this evening. A roll call vote.
I'm going to oppose that.
Okay?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's
Good
go.
night, and
Good night,
we'll
everyone.
see you next week.